All right, everyone. Thank you for your patience as we get settled in here. My name is Rael Khan. I am the director of the USC Center for Mindfulness Science that's hosting this event tonight. And this is a kind of a return visit from Dr. Carlos Warter, who spoke for our group a little over 2 years ago. And shortly after he spoke for our group, just in the last year, published this book, Psychedelics and Human Potential. And this particular theme of psychedelics and human potential has become quite central to both my personal lab, the meditation and psychedelic therapy lab, where we've been studying the combination of meditation and psychedelic therapy over the last year, and the interest for the center more widely. And we really thought it would be wonderful to have a concentrated talk on this particular topic from a person who's been in this work now for about 50 years. And I'm sure Carlos can give us even more specifics, the ones that come to mind as most salient for us tonight, about how that's evolved over the last 50 years. Certainly, I think most of us in the room, even those of us who have been interested, engaged in psychedelic therapy and or meditation, the time course of our interest and engagement is a bit less than 50 years. So I think there's really something valuable to be had, having someone who's really been at the kind of forefront of these areas for so long. One of the practices that we've done at times at the beginning of our events is to have a little meditation time. And so that's one of the things we'll do again tonight, to kind of really establish it as a not just sometimes practice, but an every time practice. But I do want to give a couple of other prefatory remarks. Number one, just to really thank you, Carlos, for coming up again from all the way from San Diego and the traffic, and also to thank all of you for just being present and interested in engaging in this discussion. The way I see it is that it's a discussion that is at the forefront of the evolution of our species. And that it's not limited to psychedelics. Really what we're talking about is human potential. Some particular plants, substances seem to give more easy access to seeing really wide vistas with regards to human potential, but they certainly are not required. And so I'm just really glad that, the time has come in our culture where more people are really interested in this discussion. So I'm going to sit down for a few minutes and lead a little meditation. I do want to say, Carlos has already told me that as he's speaking, he's quite happy to entertain questions along the way. And so just in terms of what to expect over the next hour and 20 minutes or so, is he will be speaking for a while, maybe sometimes standing, sometimes sitting, and keeping his eyes out for questions. And that does include questions from those who might be joining us remotely. So we'll have our eyes there as well. And we have a few people who have microphones who will come bring you a microphone so that not just the people in the room, but also the people who are joining remotely can hear your question, in addition to Carlos being able to hear it quite easily. And then after about 50 minutes to an hour, when the time comes, then I will come up and really have a kind of focused back and forth discussion with Carlos, which I will bring questions and topics for discussion, but also that's a time where we really welcome everyone else to engage in a kind of community dialogue. Okay, Thanks for being here. So if you're comfortable doing so, and actually for this, I might not need a microphone. Yeah, just allowing your eyes to close. And coming into the experience in this moment, in this place. And just recognizing there's nowhere to go, nothing to do right now. Just being here, being present. In this time, this moment. As and when the mind wanders, allowing it to come back, gently bringing it back, being present with the body here and now. Body, our thoughts, thinking, just being present for all of it. Recognizing nothing wrong here. And for these last moment or two here, dropping into experience the sensations in the heart space of love and care and tenderness. Allowing yourself to be in touch with your hopes for yourself, for your family, for your loved ones, for humanity. And that's when we're ready. Come back to the room for Dr. Carlos Warter being with us.
Thank you. Thank you, Rael, for inviting me again. And thank you for this beautiful meditation. And since 1965, I have never prepared a talk. We are both up for a surprise of what develops here today. As I was sitting there, I was saying, should I start with this? Yes, I will. My first contact with non-ordinary states of consciousness was when I was 9 years old. On June 2nd, 1956, my grandfather reunited the whole family and blessed us all. It was clear that he was leaving. A few hours later, he said, he's calling me, and he passed. I was very upset. I loved him, but beyond loving him, he was an inspiration. He was a cultivated human being. So there was no one that could console me. Everybody was dealing with their own grief. And a few days later, in those states which we call, how do we call them? Hypnagogic, meditation, between sleep and vigil, I saw him. I saw him radiant, surrounded by light. And he said, no need to cry for me. Life continues. And with this message, I felt calmed down. And of course, I went to tell my parents. And of course, my parents told me, very scared, very good, thank you, don't tell anybody. So I'm fulfilling the wishes of my parents and telling everybody. Life continues. I saw him, he was there. A few years later, I had a very interesting experience. I was looking at a clock. I was about 13 and a half, 14 years old. And this clock pointed to 3 o'clock. And I was looking at it and seeing it move from 3 to 5 past 3 to 10 past 3, etc. And I was repeating what I later found out is called a mantra. I was repeating a word. And my original thinking was in German. So I said the word now in German, jetzt. If you speak German, you'll understand. And I repeated it in such a way that I projected myself into a beautiful golden space that was present. And that no matter how much the clock would change, it was always now. And I experienced this nowness that has helped me throughout my whole life. When anything is not going right, I take refuge. Yes, I can take refuge in the Buddha, in the Dharma, and in the Sangha, but I take refuge in my experience because it helped me understand the progression. I went to medical school in Chile, and everything was going well. In those days, deans were very important. Not like now that every corner has a dean. The dean of the medical school was a sacred cow. And I wanted to be a dean because I thought that was the best way of serving. So when I finished medical school, an experience came to me again. And I consigned it in a journal. And what it was I was speaking in this journal to myself to reorient the value from survival to living, to reorient the understanding that we are slaves, trapped into a box, now called the Matrix, since the movie, everybody calls it the Matrix, but I felt it like a box, in which the education that comes from home and society is a brainwashing conditioning for us to be good soldiers or good peons or good worker in a society that doesn't know itself. And I wrote all this down in a journal. And a few months after that, I was having lunch at my parents' house and I get a phone call. And the phone call, you probably know the name or not know the name, I'll tell you, Pablo Neruda. Ever heard of Pablo Neruda? And I said, who is this? He says, Pablo. And I said, Pablo who? Pablo Neruda. And he says, I've read your work. It deserves publishing. I got you a publisher and I wrote you a preface. That was not my plan for my journal. My journal was a private revelation of non-ordinariness. And the book was a bestseller in Chile soon after that. I always say, with a prologue of Neruda, of course it's going to be a bestseller. But lately my wife, who's somewhere over there, after 28 published books, she thinks that's my best one. I can't find a publisher in English for it. I'm looking. That summer, my interest in becoming a dean disappeared. I was more interested in what I had learned through this book and more interested in finding out more about the secret that was inside. What is it that I need to discover in order to serve in a better way? And how can I serve the best? So I'll give you a little biographical rundown. I went to Harvard, studied pediatrics because as a psychiatrist I had to know everything. Then got bored in family practice because how would I not know families? And then did psychiatry. And then realized that phase A and phase B were absolutely not necessary. Because with what I had experienced before, I could pierce through in the psychiatric world and begin to see people as people, begin to see human beings as who they are, and not in those days DSM-2, now DSM-5, labeling in a medicine that is more and more subjected to insurance companies than to healthy well-being. So I began to work, wrote the second book, and the publisher said, did you write this book under LSD? No, I was offended. I had never done LSD. And LSD had a bad reputation. I had been at Wesleyan in a symposium on LSD, Man and Society in 1967. And everything they said was negative. People jump off buildings. They don't understand who they are anymore, fortunately, and so on. And this publisher said, you have to meet somebody And as Rael was asking me how I got into that by meeting this somebody who gave me one of the most extraordinary journeys, and I'm sure most of you have had extraordinary journeys because it is a computing of our own inner self. But in that journey, I did psychotherapy, the first part of everything that was pending in my life, through pictures that I had brought, photographies of my family, photographies of my childhood, etc., etc. That was part one. And I felt, I'm clean, I'm done. This is not an issue anymore. 10 hours of that. MDA, if you've ever heard of MDA. Not MDMA, which is the youngest brother, very shy, very giving. But MDA was a volcano. And in part two, I descended from my brain. I descended from the observer in the brain through my neck into the observer in the heart. And that was the most fabulous heart opening I ever experienced. Because, as Alan Watts says, you only need once. He says, if somebody calls you on the phone and you answer the phone, the second time he calls, you don't need to answer. You already know. That doesn't mean that we can't repeat experiences, but it means that when we get the essence of an experience, it's transformative, transducative, awakening. Awakening to our true nature. Awakening to the explosion of receptors in our whole system that were not conditioned at that time I was mentioning before, that were open. Open in a society that is not such. And the discovery that what this life is nothing but a continuation of earlier previous experiences that brings us to today as a baby new into a world of understanding what its purpose might be. I became clear, I don't know if at that time or I already knew it, because I remember my birth. And I know psychology says that nobody has memory before 3 or 4. So maybe I hallucinated my birth. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you dreamt it, if you felt it, if you knew it, if you saw it. You transform the ability of experiencing living in such a way that that becomes included. And nobody can discuss it. Nobody can say, no, you don't experience your birth. You don't remember your past lives. You don't remember the crossing over through the bardos. That's impossible. It's not accepted. But then you go to the East and it is accepted. In India, in Tibet, in China. It has been always accepted that we're not just this material manifestation point fulfilling the duty of the system, but we are essential beings of light, which navigate and sometimes make mistakes, and sometimes have an opportunity to heal those mistakes and to rearrange the journey in a direction of openness, constant openness, constant openness. As Rael said, you can interrupt me anytime with a comment, with a question, or with whatever you desire. Because we're in this together. In this opportunity, what can I tell you but what I have told you and some other things? But what can you ask and what can you tell me about how to continue this navigation? If you don't have any questions now, or do you have a question up there? I saw a hand. No hand. Okay. So after those experiences, I discovered that I had been born in the only time in history in which medicine had no relationship with the sacred. Throughout every civilization of the past, the healer, the priest, the doctor were one. But in the 20th century, after a horrific World War II, which apparently didn't teach us much things, we believe none in a correlation. We believe simply that we're condemned to live the karma of our life. And the karma is the result of previous actions, therefore we're trapped. No, we're not trapped. We can undo everything even though everybody else doesn't want to believe it, and change the structure of our brain physiology in such a way that we will respect ourselves and others from a different place. Respect ourselves and others from a different place. What place? A very simple place. Love. What is love? Can you give me a definition, please? Anybody? What? Everything. No more love? Connection. Yes? To me, love is the recognition of the same consciousness in others as in myself. And that is more than can be. It is with nature, definitely. The intelligence of nature. The intelligence of trees. The intelligence of the green of this planet. And a little later I'll tell you something more far out about this. But we're just warming up. And I need your warmth to have the fire. So, what is it about human beings that they need to be initiated into a level of awareness, consciousness called, we are at the point that we don't even know what consciousness is at this point. There's a conference in San Diego next month to see if the brain produces consciousness, and I think the consciousness produces the brain. And the brain is a machine that records and evokes. And sometimes through the discharge of an entheogen. You know the word entheogen, correct? You know the word hallucinogen? Yes, no? Anybody here? Hello, hello. Base calling pilots, are you here? From hallucinogen, we went to psychedelic. Psychedelic is still very commonly used. What is psychedelic? What is hallucinogen? And what is entheogen? Hallucinogen is a substance that produces hallucinations in our perception. So anything you take that you can hallucinate with will serve the purpose of being called that way. What is a psychedelic? Psychedelos, unfoldment of the psyche. And some people say unfoldment of the mind. But the psyche in Greek is equivalent to the soul more than to the mind. So our soul unfolds with psychedelics. And what it does learn is the amplitude of the frequency from whence, where, and how we resonate. Because each one of us is vibrating in a particular frequency. Have you ever fallen in love? Yes. 2 people in the room. 3 people. Who are these people? They're falling in love. They don't know what love is. ¿Qué pasa aquí? But then, and I connected what I was saying before, the discharge of dimethyltryptamine from the brain. And if you've ever experienced DMT, who has experienced DMT here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. DMT transforms the observer into an entheogenic participant, which means entheos. And entheos, what does it mean? Well, that's the translation to the West. It really signifies in Zeus, in the absolute God of the Olympus, the father, mother of all gods. And this entheogenic experience, it is said, and there have been some studies, seems to be, as they call it, the God molecule, the God particle, that apparently when we're about to die, gets released and flushes the brain and the whole system, so that if we get to come back, which I had the experience in was called a near-death experience a few years ago, when you come back, you experience that everything in the galaxy is beautiful, silvery light, peaceful and loving. And that there is nothing to worry about the passing on, dying, transcending. Because we are flushed with this entheogen, not called psychedelic, but entheogen, that allows us either to continue living while the manifestation point, the body, finds a nice place in the earth, because from there we come, from there we go. We don't treat the earth as from there we come and from there we go. On the contrary, we call it dirt. Have you noticed that the people call dirt the earth? Dirt where they can build something. Horrendous. Anybody from any other galaxy would feel ashamed that living beings have so little intelligence. And yet we have human intelligence. We know how to get a job. We know how to drive a car. We know how to get into a cycle of marriage, divorce, marriage, divorce, marriage, divorce, marriage, divorce. And depending on when it ends, you ended divorce or you ended married. But the purpose of human being is to find out the purpose of their own life. What are we doing here? Who are you? Who am I? Who are we? And in deep meditation, we can have a glimpse of that. And in the use of what we call psychedelics or entheogens or hallucinogens, we can have a glimpse of that also. And feel what we are. We are amazing beings of light with the gates closed to its expansion so that we can please others and ourselves, living in the mediocrity of third-dimensional reality. When we speak about fourth-dimensional and fifth-dimensional and unified fields, we don't disregard this third dimension, this third dimension, this third dimension, this third dimension. But we don't limit ourselves only to that. We don't enslave ourselves only to the material manifestation point, because who you are is not your body. Who you are is not your mind. Who you are is not your spirit. But I don't want to get into that because that's challenging for people that are leaving a little bit the third-dimensional identification of body-mind and feel that they're spiritual beings. Everybody is. Who I'm talking to is that part in you which is not spiritual, not physical, not emotional, not intellectual. Can I have some water, please? But to the divine being in ourselves, to the divine essence which operates everything in the world and in our inner reality. And here I want to go to the title of this conference that I've called The Human Promise. The Human Promise is a structure of work that I've been doing for the past 18 years with the intention of waking up people to their potential, waking up people to their possibility, waking up people to that which they never thought is possible. And sometimes, and optional, the use of these fantastic substances can help either to close the doors on the traumatic experience which we all have from past life, from childhood, or from yesterday, and open ourselves up to the mystery of existence, to the mystery of transcendence, to the mystery of you. You? Yes. You are a mystery. I am a mystery. I need to discover it. I'm speaking in first person because I've known over the years that if I say it in first person, since the listener repeats everything in their mind of what the speaker is speaking, the speaker has learned that if he uses first person singular, the listener will use first person singular and own it. Because I want you to own what might be of value in this talk. Not everything, what you consider might be of value for you. Now notice when I said for you, and you repeat for you, we're talking about somebody else. But if I say for us, it's a little more inclusive. But what I want to say is really for I, because it's the I amness of the nature of our existence that allows us to navigate through thick and thin. Questions? Thank you. The human promise is the process by means of which we learn to develop certain organs of perception and of action that in the Sufi tradition, have you heard of the Sufi tradition? I spent a year living with the Sufis in Morocco in the 70s. And I learned a lot, and I'm very grateful to what I learned there. And one of the things is to have hope that the water is coming. But it was only hope. Where? Here it is. Thank you, and may you be blessed for eternity.
Wow. Thank you so much.
Giving a little water to a thirsty man. It's what in the Kabbalistic tradition, where I went next to Jerusalem to study, is what's called a mitzvah, or an obedience to a commandment. You don't leave a thirsty person without water. So what you do, I wasn't joking in my blessing. And you know what blessing is? You know what blessing is? It's saying it as it is. Saying it well. Saying it correctly. Saying it by analysis of the nature of the existence of that term in that individual. Human promise is a discovery not only that we have chakras, and that these chakras have a realm of energetic activation that we can feel and we can sense. A couple of years ago, we spent, 12 retreats doing mantras of every single area of the body so as to illuminate the realm of the Kundalini, which is the master force that sits in our coccyx, and when illuminated, jumps up to the top of our brain and clears up the sinister veil that are in the eyes. So I went to India and lived in an ashram to study that in my young years. And as we're talking with Noah? I also spent time with His Holiness the Dalai Lama. As I was telling you, we met in the 80s, actually in late 80s, when the Berlin Wall fell, and we were celebrating that. In a conference called the First Complementary Medicine Conference of India. And there were 3 spiritual patrons, and there were 3 medical patrons, and I happened to be one of them. And Dalai Lama, Mother Teresa was booked. She couldn't come. She had a heart attack at the time. Sai Baba, if you ever heard of Sai Baba, a fantastic guy with 40 million followers and 3 surgeries for the heart and for the brain, with people coming from Great Britain to have the free surgery in Bangalore, India. And so there I developed a relationship with him, which is continuous. And what I learned the most is to smile. And the understanding that this whole thing, so I'm going to ask you to do something for me soon, is a joke. So laugh. You have to control your possibility of laughing. See, we laugh when we're stimulated by a joke that we like. But laughing is our expression. And I learned it from him. Because I was coming from Chile at the time to India. And many people from the United States were going to do a movie about this event. It was a good event. Many swamis, many yogis, many gurus, many people. And the people wanted to do a movie to commemorate this, and they told me, we don't need you. Yes, you've been one of the patrons, but you're from Chile. Who cares about the backyard of the United States? So I was upset. Why exclude me just because I come not from the United States? That's not right. So I was meditating, and then I went down to the hall of the hotel. And here was His Holiness. And he puts his arm around me and he says, let's go for a walk. And we go for a walk, and he says, the first thing I have to tell you is not to worry. That movie will never happen. Will never happen, and it never happened. So you're worrying about something that you wanted to be in, but it doesn't exist. And you need to understand that you worry so many times in life about things that doesn't exist. And I have to repeat this to you because probably you do the same thing. And then it turns out different. Or it doesn't happen. Or it gives you a surprise. Psychedelics. Human promise. The context is development. The context is we are capable of experiencing, besides the chakras, and besides the nadis, besides the latifas in the Sufi tradition, and besides the tree of life in the Kabbalistic tradition, something which permeates it all, is simultaneous, and doesn't have to be the way we imagine it. It gives us an element of surprise. And when we discover this process of the human promise, we discover that we have been ripped off by not having the delivery of what a human being is promised in this world, which is absolute development. Absolute development. What I mean is absolute development. Not a little development. I don't know if you know the story written by Faraduddin Attar in the 13th century, a Sufi master in Persia. He says that 40 birds come together. And stop me if you know it all, because I don't want to repeat myself and bore you. 40 birds want to know who the king of the birds is. And so they all come together at the bottom of this tree and they begin to fly in search of the simurg, which is the king of the birds. First bird finds Mrs. Bird, settled down in a branch, and the journey is forgotten. Second bird does it at the other side. Third bird finds a job. He's a woodpecker, so he has a job. And 39 birds don't make it, but one does. And when he looks for the simurg, for the king, he sees a mirror and he sees himself. Because it is through working the inner obstacles, temptations, desires, attachments that keep us bound in different areas of our journey. When I work with people, I always say, it is like you have a destination and you go on the highway. And the first exit, it says, nice to come here. And you leave, and you spend the next 40 years in the niceness of having come there, which is no longer there. And so on. So when we begin to discover that we need to discover the purpose, when we discover glimpses of the purpose, we know that we have helpers along the way. Angels, archangels, friends. Friends of any nature. Of the animal nature. One of my best friends are my dogs. I love them so dearly. It is amazing. The exchange of oxytocin that we have is magnificent. I love my garden too. I live in a place where there are two majestic trees. I sit under these trees and I see many things, even things that I won't repeat in here, looking at the space in which the tree exists. So we have the intelligence of the dogs and nature. We have our intelligence, not just the IQ, but we have the intelligence of our emotions, of our art activity, of our design, of our mathematics, our science, different developments of intelligentsia. We also have present cosmic intelligence. It comes through us and it allows us to wake up to experiences which are not of this world. Experiences that allow us to extend ourselves into the living existence that is not just the dog and the trees and myself, but an intelligence which surpasses us. And I want to do a little marketing here. My next book, end of 27, 27 is next year? Yeah. End of 27 is called Supraterrestrials. Not extraterrestrials, but supraterrestrials. And it points not only to the fact that life exists in many dimensions, and that not by sending radio frequencies, they're going to answer radio frequencies. They're not idiots. Maybe radio frequency is very advanced for them. Maybe radio frequency is very nothing for them. But we need to change our perception. I was talking with Ryle about this before, and he asked me to mention this. When we understand that life exists, period, we also understand that we can contact it. And that contact is not you go to a field and a spaceship comes down and greets you, even though that can happen too, and it has happened. But that we need to change, as I said before, our organs of perception and reception, our organs of action. And psychedelics are great helpers in doing that. It scares a lot of people because they're attached to their race, creed, color, sexual orientation, and that's freedom. No, that's not freedom. That is identifications of the material manifestation point. I repeat, that's not freedom. That's identification, not identity, with different things that we choose in order to say that we're free. We're not free. I don't see people being more free because they're gay or because they're lesbian. They have the same drama going on in their relationships that straight and heterosexuals. It is not a free pass to heaven. You have a question? But we need to accept that we are a being in development. And when we activate certain areas, be it through a psychedelic or a awareness level or a vipassana technique or any other meditation, and we reach a certain state of knowing, this state of knowing needs to be valued, honored, and respected as if it would be the divine itself. We need to trust our experience, not just have it. And I like to contextualize it in the human promise. Because as we have more and more agents and agency over the magnificence of your beingness, more areas begin to open up. And as they open up, again, the filters of perception, as Aldous Huxley would call it, disappear. And we begin to see transparency. So I'm going to go sit there and ask you to ask me questions.
I'll bring some water.
Thank you very much, Rael.
Hello, Carlos.
Where are you? Okay.
I just wanted to ask a question to have a little bit more clarity. When you discuss the highway,
Will you discuss?
the highway, where is the highway leading to?
You have to find a few things in life. One is purpose, and the other is destiny. What is that of which I am equipped to fulfill? People say, this is my destiny. I was destined to be the richest man on earth. You've heard that before. Doesn't mean the most sensitive man on earth. Just needs to understand that that's the destiny. But beyond destiny, I respectfully submit there is destination. There is a direction in which life directs itself for the highest good of all.
Is it non-duality?
Non-duality is an initial perception when we wake up and we see that we're all at one. But it's beyond non-duality. You know, in physics, they speak that we're in the third dimension. There is a fourth dimension regulated by time-space. And there is a fifth dimension in which what you're saying, non-duality, unity, consciousness, prevails. But then there is string theory, in which our consciousness oscillates to come to the establishment of a place which I don't know how to call. But it's very happy because it corresponds to a global view, global vision, not vision, global vision, the whole thing around, that allows us to understand the magnificence of this process called life. And I almost cry when I think that way. This is magnificent. This is amazing. You see people dedicated to so many things, using this sacred energy for their satisfaction. Some do exercise in a gym and measure their muscles every day. Some publish 500 papers and feel they're better than the guy that published 499. Some do sports, some do dance, some do art, some do science, some do philosophy, the pillars of culture. But the experience of the honoring of life is beyond that, because it is source of all these experiences and destination. I don't know if that answers your question. Thank you. Yes.
Okay.
Wait for the mic.
I haven't thought this through, so I'm sorry if it doesn't make sense. But what do you say? You were describing the fear that people have, fear of potential, fear of discovery, fear of the substances that can help them get there also. What do you say to people who do struggle with mental illness and have, because of their mental illness, perhaps glimpses of these other realities, but are trying to hold on to a reality that they can live with? Because at the end of the day, we do have bills to pay. We do have to drive the car. We do have to do these things.
Drive Tesla. Your question elicits a lot of things for me. Very good question. Let me start with one of them, which you said people that have mental illness require a certain attention. Yes. 2 points. When I lived in Morocco and somebody had mental illness, of what we call mental illness, the community would gather around and would ask this person, what information do you have for us? That's done in tribes too. It's in our aseptic Western society, where the Kennedys lock up their sister because she has a mental illness, because we don't want to deal with mental illness, that we have separated them. And in the last 300 years, we have done a lot of progress, because first we would put them in asylums. No, first we'd put them on boats in the Rhine so that they would live there forever and die in the boat. Then we'll do strange things in Salpêtrière clinics in France, like putting them in cold water, putting them in hot water, putting them in cold water, not knowing, ignorance. Then we began to separate ourselves from them. And instead of like the approach of what do you have for me? What is your story? What do you have for this community? Native Americans have dreams of people that come and reflect into something for the community, an element of trust, an element of novelty. The simple answer, what do you do with people with mental illness? You treat them. Unfortunately, today there are pharmaceutical medications that help. I stopped teaching at UCSD residents because after a lecture that I did that was related to one of my books, Recovery of the Sacred, which speaks to the lessons in soul awareness of my first 27 years. The book ends before I was 30. And the professor of psychiatry that had told me that he was going to be there for a little while because he had meetings stayed till the end. And he said, I was glued by what you were saying. Then I asked the residents, do you have any questions? And they said, how many milligrams of Abilify do you use in this situation? For me, that was enough. The maturation of our next generation of mental health professionals is scary. Because the humanity is not considered. So I said it before, when you see a human being, when I see you, I don't see just a beautiful woman in this beautiful age that you're in. I see your potential. I see what is it that I can do to assist you to fully take charge of your life. Because nobody else is going to take charge of it. Maybe people would help you, but not take charge. I don't know if it answers what you're looking for.
It opens more questions, but thank you.
Shoot the next question. Deborah said we're here on this planet. Have you ever been out of this? Okay, let me put it differently. Have you ever had a journey with anything? Tobacco, LSD, wine, a good fuck, anything that shakes up your identity in such a way that you're not tied to the physical anymore. You have. Well, let me tell you one that I had in the jungle of Colombia once. I heard there was the shaman, not called shaman. The shaman is a Siberian name adopted now in neo-shamanism of people that work with substances. Anyway, this curandero, I heard that he was a good one. So I went to see him. Long trip to get there. The guy drank bottles of alcohol to be able to communicate with us because he was so high that he needed to bring himself down. It works. I tried that in a seminar that I was teaching a few days later in Bogota. While I left people doing some dyadic processes, I went to the bar and had a big glass of cognac. I can't stand cognac. And a cigar. And I went to walk around for the time that I had allotted to this. And you know something? It was a very good seminar because I brought myself to the understanding of what was going on there instead of flying high. So here I am with this guy, and he gives me a little glass that I drink obediently, lie down in this dirty floor in the jungle, and immediately I have an out-of-body experience, and I'm looking at this body of Carlos on the floor. And I literally see an anti-peristaltic movement beginning. And I don't like to vomit. I have done ayahuasca up my ears. I've never vomited. This was yahe, which has the same inner principles. And I tell the body, it's dirty enough here. Don't make it more dirty. So there's a distance already. So I'm meditating till I find myself out of this planet in one of the most undescribable navigation body. We could say a spaceship, but a spaceship takes us to Dr. What was it called? Dr. Schmock, Dr. Spock. Spock, Schmock, I don't know. And I'm with these beings. And I'm a little scared, but not sufficiently scared so as to contract and stop the experience. Because you mentioned fear, which is, as you know well, false expectations about reality. It has nothing to do with what's going to happen. It's only fantasy. So I have a little bit of that. I don't know what primal fear would have come up. They're going to eat me, they're going to throw me down the ship. What's going to happen? And these guys look like giant crocodiles. So I said, oh, I've heard about the reptilians, you know, a race of extraterrestrials that marauder around here. And this guy gives me a mirror. And this one has the same aspect as them. And then they tell me things, out of which the most important thing was respect the green on your planet. The most important thing on the planet is green. And this green energy resonates with other areas of the cosmos and helps balance. So here I am now being a reptile, listening to this information, when suddenly, the head of this entity becomes a globe of light. And I say, well, what is going on here? And he shows me the mirror again. And my head, you know the answer, correct? What happened to my head? It was a globe of light. The most important thing I want to share with you is the respect for the green. We do not respect the green. We destroy the green. To build and build and build and build and build. You know, Shanghai. Who's been in Shanghai? You've probably been in Shanghai. You've been in Shanghai. Buildings of, I don't know, 108 stories, empty. Cities that are built to give work to people, but not thinking who is going to inhabit them, because they're either too expensive or too remote from the farmland from where people come to Shanghai. So, does that answer your question that you didn't ask?
So I was actually reflecting a little bit about empathy, and when you were, I'm curious a little bit about who you were as a child, and were you always drawn to be this kind of giving person? Because when you were describing, for example, sorry, I have so many things going through my head, but when you were describing the medical school students, to me, I think that is a huge shortcoming of the curriculum, that they're not taught the expectation that you need to have empathy. This is a skill that needs to be there. So I'm kind of curious as to just your thoughts on that and how your experiences have perhaps opened you to becoming a more empathetic person.
Yes, absolutely. My grandmother, I hear, used to say when I was 2.5 years old, and she heard me talk, that I was going to be a philosopher. That was her take on it. But truly enough, I wasn't the most empathetic. I was like all the other kids. At least trying to be like all the other kids. That's the drama of many children. They want to be like that one. But when I was doing emergency room back in 1971, and a person died, and the attending told me to go and tell the family that they have nothing to wait anymore. That's where I had an explosion of empathy, because I was in their shoes. It was very difficult to say those things to someone who had brought a loved one to an emergency room and is going to take out a body. And from there it grew. Empathy, compassion, understanding, mitgefühl, however you want to call it. And you're right. It is not emphasized in medical school. Neither in nursing school, neither in midwife school. It's not emphasized in our educational model. But of what I've read of history of medicine, it was emphasized in the Middle Ages. Not because there was a medical school, but because this doctor took this student and mentored him integrally. Not just in what herbs or what substances to use, but how to be. And mentored this person by example. That's an aspiration that I had, and I have some mentored students over the past decades. I think of one particularly who I met only 6 years ago, and his universe was Gucci, Armani. He was what, 18, 19 years old, and all that stuff. And I worked with him for a couple of years, and then I said, I give up. I'm going to send you somewhere, and you're going to spend some time with this person there. And I sent him to Kerala, South India, to an ashram. And he came back transformed. Yesterday, he was asking me if he should go for a PsyD or for a master's degree, because he wants to help people, not in the psychological model that is being presented. And I told him, go for the PsyD. It's passport in the land of fools. People respect much more what we have after our name than our name. So I told him that, and but he said, but I don't want to do anything that I'm going to learn in the university. I said, that's a very good point. You just go there, pass the tests, get a license, and do what is your vocation. Yes.
Thank you for your wonderful talk. I was just curious about your thoughts on how the way that psychedelics are emerging in the medical space is a lot different from how it enters people's lives in more indigenous cultures, yes. Where in indigenous cultures, it's like a coming of age thing, whereas in the clinical models, we're waiting for people to be kind of at their worst. Do you think that changes how the psychedelics are received by the individual and like their journey?
Excellent question. I had this topic in mind. I didn't know when to put it in. I am afraid of the medicalization of psychedelics. I don't like it. Even though some of the substances can act on the serotonin metabolism and produce results that are with less side effects than the SSRIs or the SNRIs. But we need to respect 10,000 years of the use of these medicines as initiation. You know, in the jungle, the Yanomamis take a teenager and throw in his nose yopo, which is also a form that derives from DMT. And they have an experience and come out, and then a name is revealed to them. And the name is not the name that they had as a child, but is the name of their service in the community. Out of a psychedelic, entheogenic, natural experience. Then I was thinking yesterday, after seeing that Eli Lilly bought in $3.5 billion a small laboratory called Altai, which was producing 5-MeO. Why does Lilly need 5-MeO? Because their scientists see that there is a future there. But what they want to do, and that's my biggest concern, is they want to use psychedelics without the psychedelic experience. And that is a misnomer. How do you call water not water if it's water? And it has a history. You go into a cave, you go where the Anasazi used to live in Arizona, and they have drawings on the wall that they took something and spheres left the body and traveled, or spheres came from outside and traveled into the body. It doesn't show what side the traffic is. But there is a meta dimension. Now, it's unstoppable. Pharma has done a lot of good things for us. Has reduced the death of with antibiotics, reduced the death rate of people with infections. And chemotherapy has helped a lot of people. I am an example. I had chemotherapy after having cancers about 7 years ago, and I'm cured, and I'm fine. So I'm very grateful to pharma. But also I'm leery of what pharma can do in order to materialize more pharma. And forget that these substances are initiatory substances into non-ordinary states of consciousness. And that these non-ordinary states of consciousness are sacred. And on the side, maybe, help with depression. Maybe. I used to think by using in places where they were not illegal to use, with certain pathologies that got diluted after a mystical experience, because the individual saw herself in such a grandness, in such a magnitude, that the reasons for depression fell off. And they came out of the experience feeling well. Once I was accused by a professor in psychiatry that I was disrespectfully changing the delusions of his patients. I had to do night shifts, so I did things. Yes.
Thank you so much. This is so engaging. You had the great Alan Watts quote around, you answer the phone once and you don't need to answer again. You kind of know who's calling. And I'd love to hear you speak a little bit more about that and kind of interrogate that idea a little bit, because I know so many people, maybe I count myself among them, who have had sort of transcendent, deep, powerful experiences and yet, right, get lost again, find ourselves confused and, in the wilderness. And many people even sort of chasing these experiences, going to Vipassana, almost bragging afterwards about, I had the breakthrough moment and whatever, and still very neurotic 3 weeks after the retreat. And so it seems to me there's something else, right? There's some other factors. I hear about your life and I'm very inspired, yes, by the stories you're telling me of these moments, but it seems like it takes, I don't know, like the courage, the motivation, maybe the community, the guidance to sort of arrange one's life in a way to move in that direction. Maybe it's the question of the highway again, or I don't know, right? It seems like for me, those moments have felt necessary but insufficient to really sustain that. And I'm curious to hear you speak a little bit to that.
Very good question. In my work, I make it very clear that whether we use or don't use the substances, it is not about the substance, and it is even much less about the experience. Because we don't want to transform people into seekers of experience. We want to help people become seekers after truth. And in that truthfulness, tackle the continuity of the ability that you, everybody has to access spaces of consciousness without falling into the sideways of the exits of the highways. So, when I was younger than today, and I had experienced every substance that was available, I said to myself, how about having these magnificent experiences without the substances? And I spent 12 years not taking anything and being in meditation. Well, I was working and doing things, but meditation was my focus. And I could recreate not imagine, but recreate spaces of awareness that I had experienced then with that. It is not about falling off. It's about having this destination I was speaking before, this commitment. And you know, I'll tell you something. This one is not like with my grandfather. This one I haven't told in a group. When I died at 16 years of age in an extermination camp in Poland, that I had the opportunity in this life to go visit and look for my name in the books that the Nazis had placed. Died by pneumonia, typhus, because they were killing people and they had excellent statistics. They knew exactly how many had died of what. I took it upon myself to return to this valley of tears and have only one job, which is the expansion of consciousness of myself and others. I don't get distracted. It's the only thing I know how to do. Tell me to build a shelf. It's going to be kaput. Tell me to fix my car. Impossible. Tell me to prepare dinner. By the grace of God, I have a wife, which is a wonderful, there she is, my jewel, my inspiration. She makes me dinner. She takes care of me in the dinner and in the inner servings of life. So I don't know anything else but doing what I'm doing. I don't prepare my talks because my talks are the result of what the stimulation of an audience is, of what I can say and what I can't say, and I just told you something very private. I came here with a purpose. I don't know how long I'll be here. I'm in my 80th year. I know I look younger. I don't look older than 77. And I don't know how long I will be given the gift of being able to do what I do. I do 4 retreats a year of 4 days in California, sometimes in other places, but lately has been in California, and exalt the consciousness of those who go there to their highest good. Question.
Thank you. I'm going to have to respect the time. It's 8:35. But I do want to underline thank you again. And, I feel you have served your purpose well tonight with us.
Thank you.
And some of you may be wondering, what does all of this has to do with science? It's a lyrical, metaphorical take on where we hope science will go. And of course, some of you who've been at events in the past know sometimes we have much more scientist-type talks. But there's a science behind the talk tonight, and I really thank you.
Thank you
For bringing your experience to life for us.
Thank you.
So there's going to be there is currently a table with some books and also some printouts related to the retreats that Carlos was mentioning. So Carlos will hang out for a little bit to sign books, and there'll be some to sell. And then we will have another event before too long. You'll hear about it on the listserv. So thank you for coming, and enjoy the evening. Enjoy the weekend. Thank you.